It's time for the Luca Rosano Show. Here's your host, Luca Rosano.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another edition of the Luca Rosano Show. And I'm honored to be joined by this week's guest, multiple-time broadcast award winner, author, and host, James Duthie of TSN. James, how's it going, man? So this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, good to hear from you, buddy. It's been a while since I've seen you. I love your love the background there. Congratulations on the show, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm not too sure if you remember me, but just to give my viewers some context, so I was an intern for TSN probably about 5 years ago. Wow, time flies. And I remember I had emailed James asking him if he could meet up with me. I just wanted to pick his brain and ask him some questions. I mean, he's been a guy who I've looked up to all my life in the broadcasting world, and I didn't think much of you getting back to me. So I was very surprised and happy when you did reply, and you said, yeah, for sure, I'll meet up with you. So we met up in the TSN lobby, picked your brain.
Right in the front lobby. I remember it well, bud.
Yeah, you answered all my questions, and you gave me some great advice that I still use to this day. So I just want to thank you for that. And once again, thank you for coming on here.
No problem whatsoever. I always say, like, I was you once, right? And so anybody who can't give 5 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever it is to someone who has an interest in this business, I don't understand why you wouldn't. So I'm glad we got together, and I'm glad you're still doing this in some form.
I do want to ask about your beginning and your interest in broadcasting. Did you always want to be a sports broadcaster from a young age?
I don't think so. I think that it was somewhere at the back of my mind that I wanted to be an athlete. I think most sportscasters originally wanted to be an athlete, right? Yeah. At some point you did, right? You thought you were going to the NHL or the NBA or whatever it is.
The NBA, yeah.
Yeah, for me it was football. Like, I was delusional enough, and I was like late delusional. It wasn't like 9 years old. I believed until my last year of high school that I was going to play in the NFL and not the NFL, the CFL, which is ludicrous because I was, 5'10", 160-pound defensive back on my football team, and I thought I was going to play for the Niners, which is just insane. But I think that probably somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought about broadcasting because I did, I remember, 14, 15 years old, turning down the TV and doing my own play-by-play, which I think we've all done, anybody who wanted to have an interest in the business. And so I never necessarily thought that, but I think somewhere deep in my mind, I said, I'd like to be that guy. And there wasn't necessarily, a Dave Hodge or Ron McLean or someone. I remember Bob Costas used to do the halftime shows on the NFL on NBC. And I think maybe he was the guy that I said, oh man, that would be a cool job to do the halftimes of the NFL games. I love hockey and everything, but I think he was probably the one guy that made me think I'd like to be a broadcaster.
So then you obviously went to school for it. How did you get your big break with TSN?
Well, that's a complicated story, and I won't bog down your podcast. But I was a news reporter for a bunch of years in Ottawa. I did journalism at Carleton, got his job as a news reporter, covered fires and murders and all those things. And I learned a lot from that. And anybody who's listening who wants to be a broadcaster, and I probably told you this when we met together, is I recommend doing news if you can't get a job in sports, just because it teaches you so much more about the business and how to be a good reporter and broadcaster. I don't think I would have done well at TSN if I hadn't been a news reporter before, but I always wanted to do sports, and the negativity of news really grinded away at me. And the short version of the story is that Keith Pelly, who's now the head of the European Golf Tour, used to be the head of TSN, saw me doing a live hit from an Ottawa Senators game, the opening night of the building in Ottawa, which was then called, I think, the Palladium or the Corral Center. And he phoned me, got a hold of my name and number somehow. And I remember picking up the phone. He goes, I really like your jeans. And I go, what? That's like the creepiest thing a guy has ever said to me. And when I did the live hit, I had a suit and I had a jacket and a shirt on, but I wore jeans. And I guess he was taken aback by how casual I looked and thought that was that's what struck him. So wow. Of all the things, my decision to wear jeans on that day when he happened to be watching that first night of the Senators got me an audition at TSN, and
Wow.
I actually didn't get the job when I did my audition. But I took a job in Vancouver, moved out there, and 6 months later they called me and offered me a position at TSN. So
That's amazing.
The breaks come in the strangest ways, right?
I think the lesson here is always pick jeans over dress pants if you have the choice.
Yeah, I'm sure anybody with style in class would say that's horrible. But I probably wore jeans that day because I didn't think I was going to be on from the waist up, which is something a lot of people in television do, anchors when they're behind a desk. I still do it at TSN. But in the end, I was doing this on camera where I was walking around giving a tour of the dressing room so you could end up seeing me. So I probably got in trouble with my boss, but ended up getting a job at TSN because of it.
That's a crazy tale. James, I have a strong Raptors following on this channel, so I actually want to start with you covering the team during the 2019 NBA Finals. You got to obviously, get up and close with all the Raptors during that time. How was it experiencing that and seeing the team win it all?
Yeah, Luke, it was awesome. I was thinking, somebody asked me, I was doing a book tour last fall about my favorite moments of my career. And I always say the Crosby, 2010 Olympics and the Crosby goal is probably number one because that was just such a moment for Canada. But man, the Raptors and covering that run to the championships got to be right there at 2 or 3. A lot of people, my first job at TSN when I did get hired was to host CFL and NBA. So I hosted NBA for my first 3 years at TSN. I don't think anybody your age probably remembers that. I broke in the same time Vince Carter broke in. So it was a really very cool time and experience. I covered the slam dunk contest in Oakland, where Vince, which is still legendary, another one of the greatest moments of my career. The electricity in the building that night was unreal. So I felt like my career was coming full circle when I was lucky enough to cover the Raptors run last year. And it was just so surreal because I guess that I'm kind of a negative guy when it comes to teams that I want to see win. And I'm a neutral broadcaster when I cover an event like that, but I wanted the Raptors to win. Let's face it. You want to be part of that. And I kept thinking there's no way they were going to win, even though you knew they had a chance. And when they got up 3-1, those 2 games in Oakland, which I'll still never forget, like really, I think it rattled all of us, right? To go in there and win both those games. And when it was 3-1 and thinking this might actually happen, and then when they lost in Toronto, going back for Game 6, and even with the injuries to Durant, and then Clay goes down, but I still thought something's going to go wrong. And, Danny threw that ball away late, and Steph had a chance to win it with a 3. And the negative side of me was like, they're going to lose this and find a way to lose Game 7 or something. And so when they won, I was so I hadn't been that shocked and happy as a fan in a long time, and I had to gather myself right away and broadcast because we had to go on 2 minutes later and do a 3-hour post-game show where I got to interview Masai and Fred VanVleet and all these guys, and it was really a remarkable experience, the entire thing, just to be on that court and to see the scenes back in Canada. You're kind of isolated. You're on that court with an earpiece in, watching the monitor, and you're seeing these hundreds of thousands of people on the streets of Toronto. And right behind you, the Raptors are popping champagne. Those are the moments that are the reason I got into this business, right? Yeah. Is to be able to be there for moments like that I'll probably tell the grandkids about. So it was really, really cool to be a part of. And I also want to say, I have a weird job, because I do hockey, and most people probably identify me as a hockey guy, but I do a bunch of other things. I cover the Masters and the Super Bowl and the Grey Cup and big events like the NBA Finals. And Rod Black and Leo and Jack Armstrong, like, it's sometimes awkward for me those guys have been covering the sport for years, and I walk in at the last second to help them with the final, and they could not have been more welcoming. Matt Devlin and Leo and Jack and Rod, we went out for dinner together the first night in San Francisco at this restaurant. They're treating me like part of the team. So I can never thank those guys enough for doing that, right? Because they could easily say, what the hell is this hockey guy doing here at the NBA final? But those guys are fantastic dudes.
And obviously you look at Toronto, it's always been a hockey city. Maple Leafs have always, come first.
Right.
And they probably could still come first, even though the Raptors have won the championship. But you broke in when Vince Carter broke in, and that's when basketball was starting to become more popular in the city of Toronto and in the country of Canada. What's been your take on the evolution of the popularity of basketball here in the city of Toronto specifically?
Yeah, it's been something to watch, and I think that Vince Carter era has so much to do with it. And the string of Canadians that have been taken high in the draft and that are now key players in the NBA. I think that all comes back to that sort of Vince Carter generation. And so I'll say this. You're right about the Leafs, and they still get more coverage on TSN. But although when the Raptors are hot, it's pretty close now. And that would have never happened years ago. When I started hosting NBA on TSN in those early years, the Raptors might get an audience of 50,000 for a game, and the Leafs were getting 1 million or whatever. And when the Raptors started to go on that run, the numbers got, sort of even and surpassed by basketball. And I think that says a lot. And I will say this as well. I don't think if the Leafs ever win the Stanley Cup, and many hockey fans will argue this with me, I do not think you will see a celebration like the Raptors celebration.
Interesting.
Because there is something different about the Raptors and the way they bring in, every ethnicity and every neighborhood in Toronto and around Toronto and really Canada. That scene of that parade, which again I got to cover, and that's a whole other story. But I don't think you'll see that. I think the Leafs would be an unbelievable celebration, but I don't think you will see a scene like that where every single skin color and, again, like sort of neighborhood of Toronto was represented down there. And I think that's what made it and makes basketball extremely special.
Yeah, and you look at the Raptors, they're Canada's team, so you had everybody all over Canada coming for that, whereas if the Leafs win, it's just going to be, the Toronto fans thing. And other people.
Yeah, you're so right.
Yeah.
Everybody, you get this Canada's team BS when there's one Canadian team left in the playoffs, but the truth is we're 7 different hockey nations, and they hate the rest mostly, right? Especially in this Canadian division, whereas the Raptors really did bring the country together almost like a Team Canada or an Olympic basketball team or whatever that may be. And I think that's what made it so amazing.
Let's shift to the Leafs now. What's been your reaction to their hot start, and do you think they can keep it up and make some noise ultimately this season?
I don't see why not. The Habs look really good. And besides that, the West is kind of I think Calgary will be okay because they have great goaltending, and Vancouver's got better than they are right now because they have more talent. Edmonton's still a crapshoot every time, basically. I don't think McDavid and Draisaitl can overcome all the holes they have. And so, to me, it looks like Toronto and Montreal, with the asterisk that if, somebody gets hot goaltending like Calgary, with Markstrom in a playoff run, who knows, right? Or Winnipeg, Hellebuck could stand on his head. So it's always a crapshoot when you get to those playoffs. But this is the best that the Leafs have looked in my era covering the Leafs. Now, granted, that's through whatever we are, 10 games of the season or whatever. But this is the most complete they've looked.
Yeah.
Still some scars here and there and some issues, but certainly better than the versions we've seen in the last 3 years. Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner look, like on a different level. There's no nights off anymore, right? They look like superstars every single night. And so I think there's real potential there. I'm not ready to sit here and declare that they're going to win the Stanley Cup, but this is their Captain Obvious statement, their best chance to make that run finally.
Yeah, and I made a joke on Twitter that looks like the Leafs stole the Raptors' talent from last year with the way they've been, having themselves a nice start to the season, and the Raptors have been going the other way. But there's still obviously plenty of time for the Raptors to turn it around. So
yeah, absolutely. But it happens like that, right? And maybe it's the Leafs' turn this year. There's certain things that I think for whatever reason the Canadian division might help the Leafs. That, there was always something about obviously Boston, if they face them, and last year Columbus. Columbus has that ability with Torts to be able to pull it off over a short series. And I say one thing about Torts, he's an unbelievable motivator. And I think that, this Canadian division and playing all these teams all year, I don't think that when we get to the first round or the division finals that maybe there's going to be that, I don't know if intimidation is the right word, but that thing hanging over the Leafs' head as much as there have been in past years. And so, like I said, I think this is the window's right there for them. And if you get to that Final Four, like, all bets are off, right? I think that we've always said with the Leafs that if they can get past the hump, that they could do amazing things. And I think this year that could really be said. Like, if they can just win that first round, they're probably going to be playing, the Oilers or the Canucks or something in the first round. If they can just get past that, then I think there's a real possibility they could do some damage. But let me ask you this, and maybe this is a question to ask your viewers and listeners. You want the Leafs to win the Stanley Cup this year? If there's no fans in the building, if they don't figure that out? Because I have a good buddy of mine who's a diehard Leafs fan. He's like, I do not want them to win this year. I do not want my once in a lifetime to happen in these circumstances.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
And,
I would have to
hopefully
agree.
we'll have the world sorted out by July so you can have a celebration. There'll at least be people in the streets, but I'm not sure that it would be a full building in Toronto. I don't think we're going to be there with the vaccines yet. And so I'm sure Leaf fans would take a title, any title, but I'm sure there's part of them that would say, man, maybe just next year when it's back to normal, that would be awesome.
Yeah, like I'll flip it because I'm a diehard Raptors fan. If you had told me, okay, the Raptors win the championship in 2019 with no fans, I would probably maybe wait, like finally getting that moment. I want to experience it with the fans. It'd be weird if you couldn't go out and celebrate properly if, your team that you've been watching for so long finally wins it all. So it's a very good question.
Yeah, you can't be picky. I can remember the Game 6 with the Raptors. Sorry, Game 5. They won in 6, right? They won in
Yeah.
So Game 5 in Toronto, I got to bring all my kids, smuggled them into our TSN suite with me. And I really wanted them to win, for them to be there for that. Because that's a story you tell for a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
And so I was so disappointed when they lost that game in the last few minutes.
Yeah.
But in the end, who cares, right? They win the next one.
Yeah, that's funny. I was there with my brother actually at the game, and we had it in the bag. And then Klay Thompson goes on a rampage by himself, and then we're sitting there like, how did we lose this game? We were ready to go celebrate in Toronto. Championship won in the city. That would have been amazing. But hey, we'll take the championship anyway.
Yeah, who cares? We'll take it, right?
Yeah, we'll take. We won't be too spoiled here. James, I do wanna talk about the Super Bowl with you now, because you're obviously a big football fan. You've covered a couple of these things over the years. Is there a favorite moment or memory that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I think the first ones are always special. My first Super Bowl was 2002. It was the one after 9/11, which made it really interesting. The security was insane. The first time our world had changed. So, it took an hour to get into the building, and it's been like that ever since. U2 performed at halftime, and I'll never forget that. It was right after, it was the first Super Bowl after September 11th, and I think they played Where the Streets Have No Name, and put the names of all the victims flashed on the dome. So I remember getting, goosebumps from that. And then the game itself was Brady's first Super Bowl. And quick story, we were doing our hits. We had a little TSN set, and ESPN was just down from us, Chris Berman and the boys back then, and Brady was walking sort of towards me, all the people around him, and he caught my eye, and I said, could you come do a thing with us, right? TSN Canada. And he nodded yes.
Wow.
And I'm like, crap, I'm going to get Tom Brady, and just won the Super Bowl. And he started towards me, and the PR person kind of shoved him, and the crowd just carried him away. And he kind of looked over his shoulder and gave me one of these, right? And so I remember always being bitter that I didn't get the Tom Brady interview after he won his first Super Bowl. And, didn't have any idea at that time that the career would be what it is now. And I've covered, I think this is my 8th Super Bowl and my 7th Brady Super Bowl. So he's been a part of all those things. So that's the big one. I guess the other one would be the one that they came back against the Falcons on, just because it was just so surreal. You know this a little bit from being in TV, but there's a lot of planning. When you come on TV and do your post-game show, it looks like you're just shooting the breeze. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of planning that goes into it. Okay, Jesse Palmer wants to talk about this, and Jabari Greer wants to talk about this, and we have to get our video ready. And so we had planned out everything, talking about how the Falcons had finally, beaten Belichick and Brady. And we have to leave the stands and go down under the building a few minutes early to get ready to go onto the field to do our live shot. And so we were stuck kind of in the bowel of the building looking at the TV on this little monitor with about 8 minutes left in the game. And it all started to fall apart, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I still can't. If you watch that game again, literally almost every single play had to go the Patriots' way for like that last quarter, right?
Yeah.
When you have that big a lead, every single thing has to go wrong. And every single thing went wrong for the Falcons. And it's unbelievable that they pulled this one off. And I just remember looking at Jesse Palmer and going, this is the most unbelievable thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
That they've blown this. And that the Patriots have come back, give them credit. But so that was, to me, sort of the most surreal Super Bowl moment of them all.
Yeah, I still can't believe the Falcons blew that lead. Like, I don't think that's ever going to get topped in any sport in that capacity. That's textbook.
There's 25 plays. You could go back and count, maybe I'm exaggerating, 20 plays that if they go the Falcons' way, that game doesn't end that way, right?
Yeah.
There's one first down here, one first down there, one better call here, and the Patriots will never have enough time to tie the game up. So,
wow.
Unbelievable.
Let's get your thoughts on the big game, Super Bowl 55. You got the GOAT taking on the baby GOAT. What do you expect in this game? And do you think if Brady beats Mahomes, he cements himself as the GOAT for at least the next couple of decades? Or if you think Mahomes beats Brady, Mahomes could have a chance to surpass Brady's legacy with the way he's been, playing?
I don't think that, like in this day and age, that you can win 5 or 6. I think Mahomes could win like 4 or something. He's unbelievable. But I think Brady's legacy as the GOAT is safe. But if he wins this, you could start making an argument as, forget greatest quarterback of all time, but greatest football player of all time, greatest athlete. Like, that starts to get in the conversations. Like, This is, and he's already won, right? Getting to the Super Bowl, like separating from Belichick and getting to the Super Bowl, I think is already enough in many ways, but he'd certainly like to win it. I'm really lousy at predictions. I think that the Chiefs are going to win. I'll say this: the one thing about Brady certainly in the Patriots days, they played great Super Bowls, right? When they won, when they lost, it was almost always dramatic. The last one against the Rams was crappy, boring game right till the end, but it was still close till the last drive. But every Patriots Super Bowl almost came down to the last drive, win or lose. And so I think it'll be a close game. Like I said, I'm going to take the Chiefs just because I just think they're too hard to stop. But I have no real, I'm not really confident in that choice.
I mean, I'm going to go with my Brady bias here. I'm going to pick the Bucs to win. I know it's unthinkable to, have Brady win it all in his first season with the Bucs. They're going to be the whole team, which is crazy. But I think they're going to do it. I think Brady's going to do it. And then, you're going to talk about, can this guy maybe hit 10, which he probably won't. But it's crazy how he's still going strong from that day that you saw him in the tunnel.
And you know what? Like, we will at the beginning, I would say around my 3rd or 4th Patriots Super Bowl, I was a little bit bitter and sour. Like, it's hard to come up and talk about the same stories every single year and go to the Belichick news conferences. And I think fans kind of feel the same way, right? We all got sick of it a little bit. If you weren't a Patriots fan, it's Brady again, it's Patriots again. But I do believe that when we look back on this, that we will think, man, we witnessed, like, when you have kids in 10, 15, 20 years and they're growing up watching NFL and they go, how the hell did Tom Brady make it to 10 Super Bowls or 11 Super Bowls or whatever it ends up being?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy, right? It's mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And I do think that there is something in witnessing history, being alive to witness, the greats like that. And I do think 100 years from now that this won't be repeated. And so I think that's a cool part in being alive at a time to witness Brady doing this.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's appreciating greatness. It's like the whole LeBron James thing. I'm a Raptors fan. We're Raptors fans, but just seeing LeBron try to chase and one day maybe pass MJ is great to see. And the same with Brady. We're never going to see this thing again or for a very long time. So
I agree.
James, before we get out of here, got one last segment I want to run with you. Rapid fire questions.
Okay.
All right. First one here. How did you come up with the name Rubber Boots for your podcast? Where did that come from?
This is not a rapid fire answer. I'm going to give you like a 20-second answer. I'll condense the story.
Yeah, sure.
When I used to work in Ottawa, people used to call the sports room to get scores. Like it's before the internet. I'm dating myself as an old man. So this guy used to started calling me, and I pick up the phone and go, "Hey, CJOH Sports," and he's like, "Hey, how are you? Are you wearing your rubber boots tonight?" And I'm like, "What? Are you wearing your rubber boots tonight?" So I hung up on the guy like about 10 times in a row. He called me every night. And finally, one night I was bored, and so I'm like, "Hey, are you wearing your rubber boots tonight?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am wearing my rubber boots." And so I started having these conversations with this guy who was a nut job. And I told that story on other podcasts, and I wrote about it in one of my books, and people started yelling at me on the streets when as much as, "Hey, James Duthie from TSN," I get, "Hey, are you wearing your rubber boots tonight?" And so that's what we named the podcast, which is probably a horrible name because everybody thinks the podcast is about rubber boots, and it's not. But there's the short version of the story.
I think it's great. Definitely go subscribe to it, guys, if you aren't already. Out of all the books you've written, which one was your favorite one to write?
Good question. I got a stack on them here because they're my backdrop. But Beauties was probably the most enjoyable because it was just great stories. The guy on the left, sorry, this sounds like I'm using props now. The guy on the left is kind of my stories in the business. And so that's probably was more the labor of love, but it was a harder book to write. It's always harder writing about yourself. But this was the book I kind of wrote, so maybe my grandkids someday might want to read about their granddad. And so that probably this one, I guess. But it was hard to write, like I say, because just hard to write about yourself. Easier to write about other people.
Very, very true. Go grab your copy, folks. How good are you at actual hockey from 1 to 10?
3.
I like the honesty.
I grew up in Victoria, didn't skate till I was 8 years old. And so from like Adam Pee-wee, I was no good. I caught up by Bantam, like sort of made rep my last year of hockey. And then I got interested in girls. So not very good.
What's the biggest mistake you've ever made on air? Or no mistakes at all. You're just a professional.
I've made a ton of mistakes, but the fact that I don't have a good answer to the question, I'm proud of. I've made a million mistakes, Luca, but I haven't made that one blunder. I think that lives with you the rest of your life. Knock on wood. Let's hope I don't do that before my career is done.
That's good. Who's the funniest guy over there at TSN?
In real life, guy?
Yeah.
Oh man, another good one. Jeff O'Neill is one of the funniest guys I've ever met. He's, people love him on Overdrive. He's got great stories, right, from his time, and he's so self-deprecating. Jamie McLennan's real funny too. Bob McKenzie, Darren Drager, underrated, funny guys.
Yeah, I could see that.
Onright and O'Toole are good dudes. Jay. So I'm lucky to be surrounded by a lot of funny guys.
What's your go-to snack when you watch a game?
5 power bars. My wife buys these vegan power bars that aren't as good as real power bars, but they're lying around the house, so I eat them.
I was expecting chips or something, not healthy, but you're going with power bars. I'm impressed.
Oh, I know. My wife is super healthy, so it kind of wears off on me a little bit.
That's awesome. And last one here, a little bit of a joke with this one, but who knows? Is Ben Stiller your long-lost cousin? Like, are you related in any way?
So, Luca, I used to get Ben Stiller. When I was younger, I got Ben Stiller all the time. I guess probably when he was younger, too. And then I started to get Seth Meyers a little bit when he was on Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
And then I started to get Ed Helms, Andy Bernard from The Office.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's what I probably get more now, which I don't see. I don't think it's really trending in a good way for me. I never get Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise, right? I get Ed Helms and Ben Stiller, but hey, I'm comfortable with myself.
You're a beauty either way. Thank you so much, James. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. This has been a tremendous pod just to pick your brain and talk about some great stories over the years. Thank you so much, and hope we could do this again sometime soon.
Thanks, buddy. All the best. Like I said, glad you're doing this, and thanks for having me on, and hello to all your viewers and listeners.